Hey, I hope you'll use this video to help you write your CCEE paragraph. Now, what you could do is you could pause it after every sentence and come back to it. You could watch it once and then decide what you need to do next. It's completely up to you how you use the resource. But this is kind of a picture of what we're aiming for. I always think it's important to know where you're headed, what the goal is, so that you know how to do each step on your path to success. Now, you'll notice by looking at this that it's color-coded. Your final draft will still be color-coded, just like this one is. The green is your claim. The claim tells you, the reader of your paragraph, exactly what it is that you're trying to prove. Your claim has to be clear, and it needs to tell us what you're writing about. The blue is the context or background sentence, where you give information that helps the reader of your paragraph know things that are in your brain that help them understand what you're saying. The yellow is literally the only place where you should have a direct quote from the text. The evidence sentence, the yellow sentence, is the only place in the entire paragraph where you get to direct quote from something else. Every other sentence, every other color has to be in your own words. The yellow, though, is a direct quote from the text, and it needs to have quotation marks, the author's last name, and the page number or the paragraph number where you took that quote from. Orange is the explain sentence. You get the gist, or you write a summary of the direct quote, the evidence, in yellow. And the pink is the hardest part, purple, whatever color you think that is. That is where you truly try to connect the evidence you chose to the claim. How does the quote that you picked prove what you're trying to set out to in your green sentence? Now let's do each one step by step. I've got a sentence frame here that you can use while you're writing your claim. In, by, we learned. So that's what you're trying to prove. You're telling us the title of the text that you're going to be writing about or referencing. You tell us the complete author's name. Their full name is their first and last name, whatever it is that we formally call them. And then you tell us what it is that you're writing about. Your claim should definitely include the keywords from your essential question. So for example, what I mean by that is, like, if I was saying to you, when is your birthday? To repeat the keywords from the question, you wouldn't just say December 16th. There's no keywords from the question in my answer. A real claim would tell us my birthday is. You'd take those words from the question, rearrange them, and create a sentence that tells us what you're writing about. My birthday is an appropriate answer to the question, when is your birthday? Use the words from the question in your answer. If we're writing about the impacts of water scarcity, you would need to say, in A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park, we learned that water scarcity is a problem for one of the main characters. Done. Moving on. You could name them, Nia or Salva. You could not. You've got choices as a writer. You'll notice here, this is referencing an article. So it has quotation marks around the title. Since we're referencing a novel this time around, A Long Walk to Water, you should definitely underline the text. Underline the title of the author and include the author's full name. I like to skip around in the paragraph, and I like to go from green to yellow because I think it helps you as the writer really solidify what it is that you're talking about. So I like to know, what is the direct quote I'm going to use that proves my claim? Well, if I'm writing about how water scarcity really impacts Nia's quality of life in A Long Walk to Water, then I need to go back to the text, or it's not cheating to use your dialogue journal. That is a really great resource for you. Go back to your dialogue journal, go back to the book, find the best direct quote, the moment in A Long Walk to Water, where it really tells us how Nia's life is impacted by having to go get water. Find that quote and type it into the sentence frame above. The text states that author's last name, which is Park, comma, paragraph number or page number. Quotation marks must be around your evidence at all times. When you're finished, it'll look something like this. In the box at the top, that was an example of where I stole a quote from the text, and highlighted yellow at the bottom, you'll see a complete sentence. Your evidence sentence needs to start with a sentence frame. The article states that, the text states that, the author states that, And then you need to include the direct quote with quotation marks and finish with a citation, the author's last name, and the paragraph or page number. Context comes next, so pause if you're not ready for this. Context is where you write one or two or more sentences to give the reader of your paragraph more information. A good example of what to write in your paragraph, since we're writing today about water scarcity, is to really define what water scarcity is. Tell us in your own words what water scarcity is. Tell us what it means. Tell us how it impacts the characters. Tell us a little bit about the characters' lives. So if you're writing about Nia, tell me how old she is. Tell me what her day is like. Tell me what her life is like. Tell me what country she lives in, because I might assume she lives here in America, and then I won't understand what you're writing, because children here in America don't walk all day to get water for their family. So give us all of the information, the who, the what, the where, the why, the background information you know from reading the book that will help us understand your paragraph all about water scarcity. You've got a lot to write about here. There's 2 sentence frames at the top that you can use. You can also write your own sentence frames as long as you're giving us background or context about what you're writing about. Explain is a sentence, the orange one, where you literally write a summary of the evidence you chose, or the yellow. A summary has to be in your own words, and you just tell us in one sentence, what does the text say? Write the summary or the gist of the quote. I've got an example here on the next slide that I'm going to show you. But a good sentence frame to use is, in other words, this quote talks about blank. And then you just sum up what the yellow or the direct quote says. I tried in my orange not to add new information, but to just write a summary of what the yellow portion says. According to the article, quote, they found that those people with the highest levels of physical activity had lower rates of cancer, Komarov 2. This quote explains that people who exercise more got cancer less. I, in my own words, paraphrased or wrote a summary of the evidence just to prove that I knew what it meant and to explain to the reader where I was trying to go with it, what I was trying to point out that was important about the quote in the yellow. Elaboration comes last, and elaboration is the hardest part. Elaboration is where you use your words, you use your power of explanation to connect the quote to the claim. Elaboration is where you really try to hit home how the quote you chose proves what you tried to set out in your green sentence or your claim. You're trying to prove that water scarcity impacted the life of Nia or impacted the life of Salva, that it was a problem for them, which means that you need to point out what specifically is the problem with their experience with water scarcity. Is it that their water wasn't clean? Did that make them sick? Is it that their water was hard to get to, that they had to walk so many miles? How are those things problems? Explain to me how they're problems. Don't just assume I understand why that's a problem. Explain to me that because Nia has to walk for 8 hours to get water, she can't go to school. Explain to me that because Salva has to be in the desert, because he has to walk for days at a time, that he's not sure where the water's going to come from next. Explain that that's hard for them. Explain how that's hard for him. All right, definitely look over the slides, look over this video, rewatch the video, and just try to write the paragraph. Again, what I want to emphasize to you is that writing is something you have to practice. It doesn't come to you naturally, and it's not something you do on the first try. Just like you have to practice before you play in the football game, we have to practice writing before we're truly masters at the skill. So work on this. Consider it another example of our practice, and then we'll look at some other examples in class. Talk to me if you need help.